The wind carried dust across the tracks, warm and restless. It swirled around the girl's dress like it didn't know what to do with her. She just stood there, still as a fence post, suitcase in one hand, the other held stiff against her ribs like it had nowhere else to go. Her bonnet was crooked. Her shoes were soaked from somewhere she'd been before this platform. Her lips trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper, the kind of tremble that came after a person realized they were truly alone. A man in a gray coat had just walked off, laughing. He didn't look back, didn't carry her bag, didn't say goodbye. She blinked fast, as if she could stop tears by not letting them know they were coming. Off to the side, leaning against a rust-colored post with one boot crossed over the other, sat a man no one ever noticed. Dust on his hat brim, dust on his boots. A small toothpick between his lips and a pair of gray eyes that noticed too much. He watched her cry like someone who'd seen it before. But not like this. Not someone that young. Not someone trying so hard to pretend she wasn't breaking. But let's go back to where it all started. The town of Calico Ridge wasn't much. Just a single street strangled by dry wind and rumors. One saloon. One general store. A halfway decent diner run by a widow with strong arms and no time for gossip. It was late summer. The kind where every animal was skinny and every man thinner in patience. Dust layered everything like old sin, and nobody expected anything to change unless a storm or a stranger rolled in. His name was Eli Vaughn. Folks just called him Red. Not because of his hair, which was mostly brown, sun-faded, but because of the red clay dust that seemed to cling to him wherever he went. Quiet man. Worked cattle out past the split rock ridge. Drank alone. Never smiled unless a horse did something stupid. He'd ridden into town that morning for fence nails and maybe a bottle if the general store had one hidden behind the grain sacks. He didn't like crowds, but on certain days the train platform offered a kind of privacy. A man could lean and watch the comings and goings like he was part of the world without having to join it. That's when he saw her. She stepped off the eastbound train with stiff shoulders and a folded-up letter clutched in her palm. Red saw the way her eyes scanned the crowd. Fast at first, then slower, then panicked. She smoothed her skirt 3 times. Looked down the tracks like the answer might come riding in late. But it didn't. Instead, a man in a gray coat arrived 10 minutes later, smelling like sweat and something sour. He waved lazily, said something Red couldn't hear, then tugged her behind the station like a secret nobody cared to keep. They argued. Not loud, not violent, but there was something final in her body when they came back out. She looked older. He said something else, laughed sharp and walked away, like a man who just lost interest in a stray dog. She didn't follow, just stood there at the edge of the platform while the town behind her went back to not caring. Someone spat. A bell rang inside the general store. A boy whistled. Red stayed where he was. After a while, the girl sat down on her suitcase like she didn't trust the ground to hold her. She took off her bonnet, folded it carefully, and held it like a prayer in her lap. Her eyes weren't red, not yet, but her mouth had that tightness Red recognized, like she'd swallowed something too bitter and too late. He stood there for a long time, staring at the space beside her. The space where someone was supposed to sit. Then he uncrossed his legs, flicked the toothpick into the dirt, and walked over. He didn't ask what happened, didn't offer a handkerchief or a sermon, just sat down beside her, close enough to share the same silence. She glanced at him, once, quick, then looked away, but she didn't move. "You from Kansas?" he asked finally. She nodded once. "Near Topeka. That where he found you?" She stiffened, but nodded again. Red ran a hand along his jaw, scratched at the dry patch near his chin. "You got a name?" "Claire." He waited, then said, "I'm Red." Silence again, but softer now. The train pulled away with a long screech, leaving behind a silence that felt like it could last for days. "Where were you headed?" he asked. Her voice cracked like an old door. "Nowhere. I was supposed to be going to New Mexico." He said he had worked there. A ranch. She looked down. Said I'd be his wife. Red didn't speak. just looked out toward the horizon like he was watching a storm form that hadn't yet been born. I sold everything to come, she added, voice hollow. My mother's Bible, my pa's saddle. Even my boots were too tight for the train. He glanced at her feet. She had bruises along the heel. One toe bled through the side of the shoe. You hungry? He asked. She didn't answer, just blinked again. Slow this time. Red stood, stretched, then offered her his hand. Her eyes locked on it like it was a piece of burning wood in the snow. She didn't take it right away, didn't trust it, but she didn't walk away either. He let it hang there, calm, patient, no pressure. Finally, she reached out, placed her hand in his. It was calloused, cold, light, and he closed his fingers around it, gentle as a whisper. Neither said anything more as they walked down the empty street together. But Calico Ridge was watching now, and so was the dust. They walked without speaking, the soft scuff of her shoes against the dirt road the only sound between them. Red didn't pull or lead her, just walked beside her like they were already headed somewhere they'd both agreed on. Claire kept glancing sideways, eyes swollen but dry now, like she was trying to understand what kind of man does what he just did. Folks stared. The barber paused mid-trim. The woman sweeping the saloon steps narrowed her eyes. No one said anything, not yet, but the town had its own way of speaking. They reached his horse, tied outside the smithy. Red untied the reins and offered a small nod. You can ride, he said. Claire blinked. I can walk. It's 3 miles out, he said. And I don't walk when there's a saddle. Her eyes dropped to the ground. She'd been prepared for worse. Silence, coldness, maybe even a shove to move along. But not this. Not a man offering her a ride without a string attached. She reached for the saddle horn, awkward in her movements, and he steadied her waist lightly as she swung up. He mounted behind her, careful, distant. They rode out slow, the way a man rides when he's not in a hurry and doesn't want to draw too much attention. By the time the town fell behind them, the wind was picking up, carrying the smell of mesquite and cattle. Hills opened up around them, wide, pale gold hills dotted with scraggly brush and the occasional lone tree that looked like it had given up on growing. Red didn't speak. He never had much use for words when the land could say more. After a while, Claire asked quietly, You live alone? Mostly. You got a wife? No. A pause. Then softer. Why are you doing this? He didn't answer for a while. The rhythm of the horse filled the silence. Finally, he said, 'Cause I saw your face when he walked away. They crested a hill and came down into a shallow valley where a modest cabin sat. Nothing grand, just a porch with 2 rocking chairs, a weathered barn, and a small pen for horses. He dismounted first, then helped her down. She winced when her feet hit the dirt, her injured heel pressing hard into the ground. Red saw the blood and said nothing, just motioned toward the porch. You can sit. I'll get the coffee going. She hesitated, then obeyed, sitting stiffly on the edge of the chair like it might reject her. The porch creaked in the breeze. Somewhere in the barn, a horse shifted and snorted. Red returned with a tin cup of coffee and a small heel of bread. He offered both without a word, then sat beside her. She drank slowly, like every swallow reminded her she hadn't eaten all day. He didn't ask questions, but the quiet didn't last long. That evening, Red rode back into town for supplies. He left her resting on the porch, a quilt over her knees and a far-off look in her eyes like she was trying to measure what her life had become in just one day. The general store was quiet when he stepped inside. Mr. Dupree, the owner, raised an eyebrow. You're back quick, he said. Need more coffee. Some bandages. Dupree narrowed his eyes. You all right? I'm fine. Just... He leaned forward, lowered his voice. That girl. The one from the station. Folks are talking. Red didn't answer. You know what people say. Pretty thing like that just shows up with nothing? You take her in like that. Next thing you know, folks'll be painting stories on the walls. Red dropped a coin on the counter. Leching pinch. He walked out with a sack in one hand and silence trailing behind him. But it didn't end there. By morning, the talk had spread like spilled molasses. Mrs. Petty from the diner said she heard the girl was a runaway. The barber claimed she was with child, though he admitted he didn't see no belly on her. One ranch hand at the saloon even swore she was an outlaw's daughter, sent to rob Red blind in the night. It didn't matter what was true. Red noticed it when he rode into town the next day. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. A man who'd never cared for company was suddenly a subject of it. When he came back, Claire was sitting by the barn, watching the wind stir up little puffs of dirt. Her boots were off, her feet bare and bandaged. She looked up. "They don't like me. They don't know you. They don't want to." Red set the sack down and sat beside her in the dirt. "I can go," she said. "You've done enough." He stared out at the hills. "You can stay. You want to." She didn't speak right away. Then, "My pa taught me how to mend fences. He said you can always tell what kind of man you're dealing with by the way he treats something broken." Red turned to her slowly. Claire blinked. "You didn't have to stop at that station. No. You didn't have to take my hand. No." She smiled, faint and crooked. "But you did." And for a long moment, neither of them spoke, the quiet heavier than before but warmer too. Like something had settled. Something hard and invisible had bent just a little, just enough to let breath back in. But Calico Ridge hadn't bent. It was gathering now, a storm of voices and suspicion. Red could feel it, like the smell of rain in the air before it hits. Something was coming, and this time silence might not be enough to hold it back. It started with a knock. Not the polite kind, not the kind neighbors use. This one was sharp, deliberate. 3 raps, then silence. Red was whittling a broken piece of saddle leather on the porch when it came. He didn't stand, just set the knife down slowly and looked toward the road. 3 men stood outside his fence line, all on horseback, dust-covered, arms stiff at their sides. Their horses shifted in place like they didn't want to be part of what was coming. Claire stepped out from the cabin behind him, her hair still damp from the wash basin. Red gave her one quick glance. "Stay inside." She didn't argue, just nodded and backed into the shadows. Red stood, slow as always, and walked out past the gate. The tallest rider was Luke Carver, owned a dry goods store, but thought like a sheriff even though nobody ever gave him the badge. Red had punched him once years ago when he accused a Lakota boy of theft without proof. Carver still held that grudge like a Bible. "Red," Carver said, too casual. "Mind if we talk a minute? You're already talking to." Carver gave a thin smile. "Some of us been wondering about that girl. The one from the station." Red didn't flinch. "She's fine. Sure. But folks saw the way she showed up. Crying. Alone. No ring, no family. Then you bring her out here like she's yours. People ask questions. Let 'em." Carver's smile dropped. "See, it ain't just you they're a skin about. Town's got a reputation. We let women wander in, no past, no name, next thing you know we got outlaws at our doors or worse. She ain't an outlaw. Can't be too sure. She's a girl who got left. That's all." Carver leaned forward slightly in the saddle. "I ain't saying she's done anything. I'm saying it don't look right. And when things don't look right, they don't stay quiet." Red crossed his arms. "You done?" Carver paused. Then, as if forced to, he added, "We'd like her to come into town, answer a few questions. That way folks can calm down." Red stared long and hard. "You want to put her on display?" "No, we want to protect the town." Red's jaw tensed. "Town's never done much for girls like her. You want peace? Leave her be." A beat of silence stretched. The other 2 men glanced at each other. Carver finally muttered, "Suit yourself. But if something happens, it's on you." They turned, kicked up dust, and rode off without looking back. Red stood there until the trail dust settled. Then he went back to the porch and sat down, picking up his knife like nothing had happened. Claire came back out. "They want me gone, don't they? They want you afraid." "I am." He didn't respond. That night, the silence grew heavier, the kind of stillness that comes before something shifts. Red sat on the porch with a rifle across his lap. Not loaded. Not yet. But close. Claire brought out a plate of beans and bread. She didn't ask if he was hungry. Just set it down and sat on the step below him. I could leave, she said softly. Walk to the next town. Find work. Place. That way you don't lose this. He didn't answer right away. Then, what do you think I'd be losing? Peace. Reputation. Neighbors. Whatever's left of your standing in that town. Red leaned back slightly in the chair. Don't care about peace if it means letting good folks get trampled. Claire looked at the stars. Her voice barely carried. He told me I was lucky he chose me. Red didn't look at her. He was wrong. She closed her eyes. He said no one else would ever want me. That even if I screamed, nobody'd listen. Red's voice was flat. Then he don't know me. Silence again. But this time the wind wasn't silent. Carried sound, faint, distant. A low rhythm. Claire froze. Do you hear that? Red stood slowly, ears tuned like a coyote on edge. He did. Hoofbeats. Distant but many. Coming steady. He walked out to the edge of the pasture and scanned the horizon. Dust. At least 10 riders. Maybe more. Coming from the west. He turned back toward Claire. Go inside. She stood but didn't move. Who is it? I don't know. He went to the barn, pulled the rifle, loaded it slow, grabbed another, checked his knife, slid it into the back of his belt. When he came back out, Claire was waiting by the door. You don't have to fight for me. Red met her eyes. I'm not. I'm fightin' for what's right. The riders didn't come fast. They came steady, deliberate. By the time they reached the front gate, the moon had risen high, casting a pale glow over everything. They weren't townsfolk. They wore dusters, hats low, and in the center, riding a darker horse, was a woman. She dismounted first. Red stepped forward, rifle lowered but ready. Evening. The woman pulled off her gloves slowly. You took in a girl from the station 3 days ago. Red nodded. I did. She your kin? No. You her husband? No. Then why'd you take her? Because I was the only one who did. The woman studied him for a long moment. Then she motioned to one of the men behind her. He tossed something. It hit the dirt near Red's feet. A bundle of letters. Torn, water-damaged. One of them had Claire's name on it. Red's breath caught. He bent down slowly. The woman spoke. She's not who she says. She has people looking for her. Dangerous people. Red looked up. What kind of people? She didn't blink. The kind that take what they want. The kind that don't stop. Red's hand tightened around the rifle. The sound of the wind seemed to vanish. You here to take her? We're here to warn you, she said quietly. This doesn't end easy. She turned, mounted, and rode off with the others, leaving the bundle of letters and a heavy silence in their wake. Claire stepped out behind him. She saw the letters, saw his face. I didn't lie, she said. I didn't know. Red didn't look at her, but something in him had changed. The wind carried the dust across the porch again, and this time it didn't settle. The barn lantern swung gently, casting long shadows across the packed dirt. Red sat on a wooden crate, elbows resting on his knees. Claire's letters fanned across the workbench beside him. Some were barely legible, ink smeared by tears, weather, or both. She stood by the doorway, the light catching the edges of her dress and the hollow in her cheeks. She hadn't slept. Neither had he. I didn't know anyone was looking for me, she said again, quieter this time. He never let me send letters after I left. I wrote them. I just never knew if they reached. Red didn't move. He stared at one letter addressed to Margaret Claire Hensley, a different name than she'd given. It made sense now. The fear, the hesitation, the weight in her shoulders even when she smiled. He looked up slowly. That woman, the one who rode in last night. You know her? Claire hesitated, then nodded. Her name's Evelyn. She worked for my father. He was a lawyer in Kansas. Well off, strict. Thought money could fix anything. Red let her talk, didn't interrupt. Claire swallowed. When I met Tobias, The man who left me at the station. I thought he was different. He made me feel like I wasn't just a decoration on my father's shelf. She laughed once, bitter. But Tobias didn't want a wife. He wanted something else. A trade. A payment. Red's jaw clenched. Claire stepped forward into the barn. I ran. Took what I could. Changed my name. I thought I could disappear. Red stood, slow and steady, and walked to the stall. He reached for a clean saddle blanket, folded it, then turned to her. You didn't disappear, he said. You landed. She took the blanket in her hands, staring at the worn wool. They'll come again, won't they? Yes. What'll you do? Red looked toward the barn doors, out at the quiet valley bathed in morning blue. Whatever I have to. The next day, Red rode into Calico Ridge with his chin up and his back straighter than usual. He didn't stop for small talk. Didn't nod at the glances. He walked into the sheriff's office. Sheriff Ames was asleep, boots up on the desk. You got a minute? Red said. Ames stirred, blinking, then rubbed his eyes. Red, everything all right? No. Ames leaned forward, boots dropping to the floor. What's going on? Red laid the bundle of letters on the desk. You ever hear the name Margaret Hensley? The sheriff sifted through them. His eyes widened. Governor Hensley's daughter? From Kansas. Red nodded once. Ames sat back, slower this time. Lord above. She's been missing a year. Thought dead. She ain't. Ames gave him a long look. You sure about this, Red? If she's who you say, that puts a lot of eyes on this town. She didn't run for fun. She ran for safety. And the folks that come for her? They won't knock next time. Ames sighed. We're a small town, Red. Ain't got an army. Just need you not to get in the way. The sheriff stared at the letters again. You're really gonna stand with her? Red looked toward the window, where the sun was just creeping over the rooftops. She stood alone long enough. He left without waiting for an answer. By evening, Evelyn returned. This time, she rode alone. She waited at the fence line, not crossing, not shouting, just waiting, hat low. Red came out, rifle slung but not raised. She nodded at him. She tell you who she is? She did. Evelyn dismounted. Her voice was even. Then you understand how much danger she's in. Her father's men will keep coming. One way or another, they'll drag her back. Red didn't answer right away. You ever think maybe she don't belong to anybody? Evelyn's mouth tightened. That girl's got blood in her that turns heads. And there's people who'll pay to control that. She's not for sale. Evelyn took a step closer. You think you're helping her? Hiding her on a ranch like a rabbit in a hollow? Sooner or later, Red, someone meaner than me is gonna come. You can't stop what's coming. Red's eyes didn't waver. No, but I can meet it head on. Evelyn exhaled slowly, like she wasn't used to meeting men who didn't fold. She was just a child, she said, more quietly now, left in the care of wolves. I tried to warn her father. He said, a girl must learn her place. So she ran. Red watched her closely. Why tell me all this? Because, she said, looking out across the open land, you may be the first good man she's ever met, and that means they'll come for you now, too. She mounted her horse again, pulled her hat low. When they come, she said, don't expect them to ride in the front gate. Then she turned, kicked once, and disappeared into the darkening trail. Inside, Claire stood by the window, fingers gripping the curtain's edge. She's right, isn't she? She whispered. Red stepped into the house, hat in hand. Probably. I should go. He sat down at the table, unfolded a clean napkin, and set a spoon beside a chipped bowl. You stay as long as you want. Her voice trembled. I don't want to get you hurt. Red didn't look at her, just motioned to the chair opposite his. You already got me here, he said. She sat slowly, across from him. Candlelight flickered between them. Outside, the wind carried no dust now, just the weight of what was coming. And for the first time in a long time, Claire didn't feel like she had to run. The air turned colder overnight. Not the kind of cold that comes from weather, the kind that creeps under doors when something is about to break. Even the animals were quiet. Birds that usually chirped at dawn sat still in the brush. A coyote cried once in the far hills, but the sound didn't linger. Red stood by the window with a cup of black coffee in hand. Claire lay curled on the small cot near the fireplace, blanket pulled up to her chin. She hadn't stirred all night. He could tell sleep had finally found her. The real kind, not the restless drifting she'd been doing since she got there. But he also knew it wouldn't last. The dust came first. Just after sunrise, a thin trail of it appeared on the northern ridge. Not fast, not careless, just steady, like a man taking long strides towards something he knew he'd find. By mid-morning, 3 riders broke through the horizon. They were dressed in black. No insignia, no flags, just long coats and hard faces. One of them, a thick-set man with a scar running from his temple to his jaw, wore gloves too fine for a cattle hand. Another had a cane but no limp. The third rode slightly ahead, eyes hidden under a bowler hat. Red stepped out onto the porch as they approached. No rifle in hand this time, just silence and calm. Claire was behind him, unseen but not unaware. She gripped the edge of the wall, watching through the crack between boards. The man in the bowler hat dismounted, brushing dust from his jacket. "You must be Red Vaughn," he said, voice polished, Eastern. "You have something that belongs to Governor Hensley." Red didn't blink. "She don't belong to no one." The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Let's not pretend this is about philosophy. I'm here on legal authority to bring her home. Her father's name, and his money, travel further than you think." "She's not going." Bowler Hat gave a long, exaggerated sigh. "You know, I respect your type. Rugged, isolated. Think the world is simpler than it is. But this is kidnapping, Mr. Vaughn. Harboring a runaway with a bounty on her head. We're within our rights to arrest you." Red's jaw twitched. "Then try." Scarface dismounted now too, stretching as he came forward. Bowler Hat held up a hand. "No need for unpleasantness. We'll give you 1 hour. Then we come back. And this place becomes a very different scene." They turned and rode off, hoofs thudding hard and angry. Red stood still long after the dust settled. Claire stepped out slowly. "They'll come back. I know. I should give myself up." He turned to her. "You want to?" "No." "Then we don't." She stared at him. "They could kill you." He gave a faint nod. "They could." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she went inside and began to gather the dishes. She cleaned the table. She swept the floor. She folded the blanket at the foot of the cot. All small things, as if preparing the house to be remembered well. Red watched her. "You ever shot a rifle?" he asked. She froze, then looked at him. "Once. I hated it." "Well," he said, going to the cabinet, "might be time to hate it again." He laid out 2 rifles, a box of shells, a knife. Claire's hands trembled as she picked one up. "They really think I'm property," she whispered. Red didn't answer. He checked the sight on the Winchester, eyes calm but focused. Outside, the wind picked up. Not hard, just enough to scatter leaves across the dry yard. A hawk cried overhead. Time passed. An hour turned into nearly 2. Then the riders returned. But not 3 this time. 6. They didn't stop at the gate. Red stepped off the porch, rifle in one hand, calm as ever. Bowler Hat raised his hand again, but this time it wasn't a warning. It was a signal. The men spread out. Scarface pulled a revolver. The man with the cane moved slow, reaching beneath his coat. Red spoke first. "You think this'll scare her back?" Bowler Hat gave a small laugh. "No. I think this'll scare you enough to do it for her." Claire stepped out behind Red, the rifle shaking in her hands but her chin held high. Bowler Hat's smile faded. "You have any idea what you're doing, girl?" "Yes," she said. "I'm choosing. She's under my protection," Red added. "You want her, you go through me." The standoff held. A wind gust swept dust across the yard like a curtain being drawn. Then hoofbeats. Fast. From the south. Red didn't move, but his eyes flicked toward the ridge. 10 riders. Coming hard. Town riders. Sheriff Ames in front. Bowler Hat saw them the same time Red did. His mouth curled. You called the law? Red shook his head. Didn't have to. The sheriff pulled up, hat low, hand on his holster. This here's still my county, he said. And I don't see any legal papers. No warrants. Just threats. Bowler Hat stepped forward. This is above your head. Then call Washington, Ames replied. But out here, she stays where she's safe. Scarface looked ready to draw. Red's finger inched toward the trigger. The tension broke like a gunshot, but no one fired. Bowler Hat gave a tight smile. You've made a mistake. No, Red said. You did. You thought she'd still be alone. The man held his stare another moment, then turned his horse. This ain't over. They rode off. Dust swallowed them again. And in the quiet that followed, Claire let the rifle drop and wept into her hands. Not because she was afraid, but because she'd finally been believed. And it had saved her.